On today's Locked On Texans podcast, we talked to my man Luke over from Locked On Vikings, getting to know Danielle Hunter and making sense of the draft pick trade.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, Texans credential media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Thank you to all of our first-time listeners and viewers. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. If this is your first time, thank you to all of our returning listeners lending your ear for another episode as we talk Texans. We'll be talking Texans and Vikings. My man Luke Braun from the Locked On Vikings podcast.
Crossover edition.
Funniest people. Huh?
A crossover edition.
Crossover, I know, right? This is kind of new, right? Crossover edition on a Tuesday. Luke is one of the funniest members of our Locked On family. But we open up today's episode looking at the league jerseys. Before that, I want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. There was 2 leaks on social media, right? The first leak of the Texans' new uniform. I thought this was a prank, a joke. It looked like something that was purchased off of DH Gate. That first jersey looked like a beauty supply version of the Roughnecks jersey. That's how unbelievable that was. Unbelievably bad. But the second one, Cal McNair got on Reddit. Well, by the way, Cal has been doing a very good job of engaging with fans on the Reddit platform. Remember, he was very active last year on Reddit, right, doing the Q&A. And he put out the picture of Nico and Tank. And with the lighting, and of course, because that 24 jersey, that was Derek Stingley. But when you get like real athletes that are actively playing for the team, the jerseys look a whole hell of a lot better, right? I mean,
yes,
the leak was amazing. Cody, what are your thoughts?
Man, first and foremost, I really do feel bad for the Houston Texans because they actually wanted to keep this under wraps until the week of the draft. That is when we're going to get the whole entire new branding of the Houston Texans with all of their new jerseys, the home, the away, and of course the alternate. So I felt bad because it's like, man, why would you leak this? That first picture, John, to your point, it was terrible. But when you take a look at, what Nico Collins and Tank Dell, what they was able to do when they showcase, yeah, this is something to get excited about, man. I know a lot of people are questioning, what was they inspired by, the Atlanta Falcons or whatever the case might be. John, I'm not going to lie to you. I really like this new away jersey for the Houston Texans, man. It's just everything is new. That's the one thing a lot of people have been talking about when you look at the Houston Texans and this new regime, the CJ, Will, Tank, the new version of Nico, Coach D'Amico Ryans. Everything about the Houston Texans is new, and this is the first time in franchise history that the Houston Texans are going to get a whole new rebrand from home, away, in their alternate jerseys, man. I don't know about you guys. I truly do love these jerseys, and I can't wait to see what's in store for the jerseys that they're going to wear inside of NRG Stadium starting in 2024.
I can't wait to see the alternate jersey.
Yeah,
I think that's gonna be flames. I think that's gonna be absolute flames.
Well, by the way, really quick, John, I'm gonna put this back up here. As of right now, are you disappointed? There's no H-Town blue as of right now. From what this picture alone.
No, this is fire.
Okay.
Based off of the leak, I'm fine. This is nice. This is like you said, Cody, this is a new version of the Houston Texans.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I mean, shout out to Cal, man. Like, kind of just like, okay, well, the leak is out. And again, we may need to keep an eye out on the Twitter streets because we may, get a report that 4 black vans popped up at somebody's house and it had bulls on parade. Like it had bulls on parade with an exclamation mark on the 4th van, and 8 dudes in all black hopped out of whoever house. They found the IP address, whoever leaked it, and they getting it back in Texans red. I'll say that. I don't want to say blood, but all jokes aside, shout out to Cal for kind of like, okay, well, it's out, and y'all are not taking this picture favorably because that first leak was again like DHgate T-move type of.
And what
quality.
was he? It was like he was in a warehouse or something. There was no lights.
That
no
looked like, so if you go to the NRG stadium, you got the floor level you can walk in where the media go in and some of the club members. Then you got like the regular area. Then you got like I don't think y'all really had enough money to get into the stadium type of area. You caught him on a deal, and it's a corner. Like, I think that's where that picture was taken.
I just want to know why was the lighting so bad? Like, oh my goodness.
It was bad. But again, shout out to Cal for hopping in front of that bullet and saying, let's go ahead and spin it in a positive way, which is something he's been doing in terms of his engagement, right, for the past couple of seasons. And so this is just another like, hey, man, Cal doing what Cal is doing. I don't think this is something Bob would have did. And I think this is why it's important to put emphasis on new regime, new version of the Texans, right? It probably would have never got leaked under Bob, but it did. And I like the fact that Cal just took the initiative to put a positive spin on it. And so this is one of those things where you look at the old version of Houston, and that culture kind of like slowly fading away, and this new culture under Cal, under Nick, under D'Amico, more to life. So I like that, and shout out to the McNairs for having fun with it today.
Really quick, since you mentioned Bob, I do want to mention this. From what I know about the Houston Texans rebranding, nothing will change with the logo. I know I saw some people questioning whether or not there's going to be a new logo, whatever the case might be. Kyle McNair said that the Houston Texans logo was the idea of his father, and as of right now, he said he is never going to change that logo. But once again, shout out to the McNairs. I love the rebranding, man, and I can't wait to see what's in store for the Houston Texans moving forward.
Absolutely, and that logo should not change. Also, if you are one of those fans that are getting those last minute tickets and you're way up there, I'll tell you what, check out Game Time. It's super easy, right? You ain't got to worry about where you're buying your tickets to your next big event, because with Game Time, they take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat. So you're going to be able to see if you're sitting up high with the rest of the Raptors where the jerseys are hanging, or if you're sitting up low to where you got a good opportunity to see all of the action. Don't worry about that, because Game Time has you covered with the views from your seat and their best price guarantee. What does that mean? That means if you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, moving into a crossover moment here. Locked on Vikings, Locked on Texans. We kind of had to do this because we keep doing things together.
Yeah.
We're swapping edge rushers. We're swapping draft picks. We got a linebacker from Houston. We got a lot to talk about. But I think the thing that Texans fans are going to want to hear the most about is Danielle Hunter. Kind of the marquee signing over there. And then Jonathan Greenard comes over to Minnesota. So the thing people probably want to hear is, okay, how do these two players compare to each other? The Vikings are paying a little bit less. They're paying about $19 million a year, as opposed to, I think it's $24.5 a year for Danielle Hunter. And Danielle Hunter's contract is like almost fully guaranteed, whereas Greenard's has a much more standard structure.
Right.
4 years, $76 million, about half of it's guaranteed. Well, we don't actually know the details of the contract structure and if it's like how backloaded it is or whatever, but that's going to probably be something a little more normal for the Vikings. So I guess We've got to figure out exactly which. We just have to compare these two guys, right? So what do you think in terms of how Danielle Hunter and Jonathan Greenard compare? Here with John Hickman of Locked On Texans, and I'm Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings.
I think for Greenard, I can't really talk about Hunter. Like, I know he's a premier pass rusher when healthy. I know that he's an impactful player, setting that edge, being able to get after the quarterback, set the edge against the run. And I think for Greenard, when healthy, he's the same. Honestly, he's not that tier of a player, I would say Danielle Hunter is. But what I saw from Greenard this past year, which is why I really wanted him back to Houston compared to maybe like a Dalton Schultz who Houston retained, was when he was on the field, you saw a player who became a much better pass rusher compared to when he first came out of Florida. Became much better at stopping the run compared to when he came out of Florida, and got more comfortable also because the pieces around him were also much more consistent as well. So you saw him be able to be a dominant player for that Texans D-line or defensive front because Sheldon Rankins had a good year. Malik Collins had a good year. On the opposite side, Will Anderson had a good year. So he was one of those pieces in the puzzle that did his part. And because of that, because of everybody else, his part was huge for this team to be able to get, career franchise record of 46 sacks. Mind you, J.J. Watt had 2 20-sack seasons in Houston, but because of everybody else on that defensive front seven, because we'll talk about Blake Cashman and his impact, you saw Greenard really be able to have a career year. And I think with you guys, I don't know if you have a player on the opposite side or a player in the middle that could be, dominate a game or two. But
not really. Greenard's like the guy. Like he's coming in to be like the focal point dude.
Right. And that may be a worry, but I really do like Greenard. I mean, and I think for me, the biggest reason why I like Greenard as a football player is when healthy, asterisk around that, of course.
Okay.
The multitude of ways of getting after a quarterback. There's no limitations on how he can get after a quarterback. You'll see him in middle of the game kind of like, okay, I messed up on this play, and they were able to run right past me. Now I need to truly set the edge and make a play. So he makes in-game adjustments on his own. I like Greenard. I think you guys are getting a very good football player. Again, you may end up missing Hunter because the question mark around Greenard will always be when healthy. But when he is on that field, and you guys have to draft help, you're going to get an impactful player.
It's interesting because there's this injury concern with Hunter as well in that. So he missed like 2 years in a row, most of 2 years in a row. One of them was a pec injury. That kind of thing doesn't tend to sustain. That you miss your time and then you get your operation, then it heals and it's over. But the neck thing that he had, so he had a herniated disc in his neck back in 2020. That's the JJ Watt injury, the one that kept him out for like 2 years. That kept him out for a year. He got his surgery. He ended up getting ready to play again. Played for 6 weeks in 2021, and then he tore his pec, totally unrelated. But it's like bad luck. And now it looks like, oh my God, this guy can't stay on the field. He played full seasons both of the last 2 years, double-digit sacks both of the last 2 years. So it appears as though he's as past that as he can get. But as you guys, as Houston fans probably know, when it comes to defensive linemen and those disc injuries in your neck, it always has that little chance that it can crop back up because the way that you operate on that particular like part of your spine isn't repairing it as cleanly as you would like an ACL or something like that. Like you kind of just clean things up and hope it doesn't happen again. So there's always going to be that little background concern, but he has proven now 2 years in a row that he can play a full season. So it's no more than like a little background voice in your head that might be saying, oh yeah, maybe he gets hurt this year. Like there's this 5% chance. Beware. But what he is, but what he is everything. He does everything. This is what Danielle Hunter does. He's a totally freakish athlete. If you see a picture of this guy, you're like, my goodness, how are you a human? But he's like, the reason he wears 99 is because he's a creative player. Like that's people in Minnesota forever called him like a Madden creative player. Because it was every slider maxed out. He's, long, he bends, he's strong, he's fast, he's explosive. He's got he ticks every single box. If you want him to be a guy that, smartly, patiently contain rushes against a mobile quarterback, he's got you. If you need him to just set up a right tackle all day long and then, wait for a big third down to get that sack, he's got you. And he comes into his own big time on third downs in particular. He is like the king of the third down drive killer sack in a huge moment. And that's actually by design. That's something that Mike Zimmer had him doing for years in Minnesota. And I don't know what DeMeco Ryans does with his edge rushers if he moves guys around the formation so much, but Mike Zimmer would not. He would say, no, you're going up against this dude all day long, and you're going to set him up, with speed to power all day long, and you're just going to run that on him, and he's going to think that you got him, and then you're going to hit him with a spin move on a third down that they do not see coming at all. And you're going to get that. And so he's got this situational awareness to pick a really extraordinary moment in the game to unleash the counter punch that absolutely will get a sack that he's been setting up all day. And that's why a lot of his production skews into third down. I mean, third downs are easier for edge rushers anyways. But more than other edge rushers, his production skews into third down, very much on purpose. And I mean, this led to playoff wins for the Vikings. If you just need him to be a role player, stop the run or whatever, he can set the edge really, really well. He can, gap and a half, Jimmy Pony, that kind of thing. Mike Zimmer taught that. But the last couple defensive coordinators didn't. He also did fine there when he was just straight up one gap, hammer into a pulling guard and hold your spot. Whatever you need to do, he can do it. He answers every single question. He is a superstar. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I love Danielle Hunter so much. Personally, I'm mega pissed off that they let him walk. And the only concern here is that he's going to be 30 this year. So do you start seeing athletic decline? Which man, the dude is one of the biggest athletic outliers I've ever seen. I'm not sure if I'm following the classic patterns with him is the expectation. I love the dude. You guys got to.
I also think that's a good thing for you guys with Greenard. He's only 26. He'll be.
I think that's part of the reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think for Houston, we see the 2-year deal, and understand who the general manager is here in Houston. I think Nick Caserio knows that the first real major contract, aside from Laramie Tunsil, and Titus Howard has 18.5 for a right tackle. Laramie Tunsil has a major cap hit. He's making over 25. He reset the market twice for left tackles, but he knows that in a couple of seasons, I got to get ready to pay for Derek Stingley, Will Anderson, C.J. Stroud, right, in a short amount of time. The 22 and 23 draft class. So I think with Hunter, that deal was specifically for them to have a 2-year window to have that talent that they need on the defensive front. But with you guys, the plus is, with Danielle Hunter being 30 now, Greenard is only 26. And he is a player, as I mentioned, who's getting better and better and more creative with his ways to getting after the quarterback. And I think the older he gets, the more mature he gets on the field with that time, I think he's going to be a player Minnesota guys like. I mean, you guys are going to talk about we miss Hunter a little bit. We kind of miss him on the field, but Greenard is still a productive player.
So what about Blake Cashman real quick? Can you tell me exactly what the Vikings got in this guy? Former Gopher. A lot of Minnesotans are very familiar.
Yeah. A very good linebacking coverage. I mean, that's what I got. He's a guy that is a very good tackler. Don't have a lot of missed tackles. You hear a lot of people say this, and it's very true for Cashman, but he does his job. He's in his assignments. He's making plays, and I mean, you guys, you're really going to love him in coverage. My only worry with that is before this year, Cashman didn't necessarily play starter snaps, right? He wasn't necessarily a full-time starter throughout his career. I know he had another season, I think, with the Jets where he got a good amount of snaps, but this was his career year, and he stepped into his role because of the lack of how can I put this? The lack of trust with the linebacker core throughout the year. At one point, Houston couldn't trust Christian Harris from the first half of the season, the second half of the season. I mean, he turned up and was clearly the Texans' best linebacker. You can't necessarily trust Perriman in passing situations, and so you have to take him out on third and second downs at times. And so with Cashman, they trusted him the most to be able to drop back in coverage and make plays, and that's what he was able to do. And he was also very good at just, again, man, it's assignments. He's good against the run as well. So I think you guys are going to get a player that is a solid player, maybe played over his expectations this year, and I do want you guys to keep that in mind. But overall, there's no complaints from me with Cashman. I thought he was a very good football player.
All right. So the thing that I think Vikings fans want to talk the most about, and I have some curiosities too with what you guys are going to do, is the draft trade. Vikings now hold pick 11 and 23. So we are going to talk about that next.
Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply.
Keeping it rolling here with an impromptu crossover here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings here with John Hickman, who does Locked On Texans. Just talked about some of the free agent swaps that we've had between these two teams. And now there's draft pick swaps. So here is the trade. The Vikings send Houston pick number 20, or they send Houston a second round pick this year and a second round pick next year. And they do a little 6-7 swap.
Yeah.
For that's it's something. For pick number 23 coming back. So the Vikings are doing this. I'm sure you all can piece this together. The Vikings are clearly aiming at a quarterback. Everybody knows it. They're going to trade up to pick 3, 4, or 5. And pick whatever quarterback that is. Drake May, JJ McCarthy, probably one of those, it sounds like. Maybe Jaden Daniels if the Commanders have been really good at smoke screens this year. But that's where we're at. And on my show, I spent the whole first part of the show on it. But why are the Texans willing to do this kind of thing? To me, it kind of looks like the Texans divisional round appearance, exciting rookie quarterback, signing guys like Danielle Hunter. They're trying to, I think they're walking into 2024 saying we're ready to contend here. So how does that fit into that plan to trade 23, pick 23 for 2 second round picks? Do you think that helps that plan?
So my thoughts are, for one, I thought I'm not going to say fleeced, but I definitely think they could have gotten more from Minnesota for that.
You think so? Because all the charts say that the Texans came out like way ahead, which makes sense because it's quarterback stuff. Like there is kind of an extra premium on that, but all the charts said the Texans came out like about like if they sent a third rounder back, it would have been fair. That's like what the trade charts say.
The reason why I say I think they could have gotten more out of that is because you're helping a team potentially go find their franchise quarterback, and we know how valuable that is in the NFL. So you kind of got to make them work a little bit, honestly. Like, shake it a little bit. Don't just come in here and think you're gonna get some free money. I need you to work. But I think for Houston,
we gave you Hunter. Be nice.
I think for Houston, 2 things. They probably view players from 23 to now 42 in the same range, right? And I think if you see Houston maybe at pick 20, that trade maybe don't go down because at pick 20 you still have an opportunity to get one of the premier quarterbacks. And personally, I believe that you could have got him at 23 because of the amount of receivers that are going to be taken in this draft. The receivers and quarterbacks alone are going to push other positions down. But do they make the trade at 20? I don't think so. But with 23 to 42 now, They may look at a group of players that they say, well, we like this guy, we like this guy, we like a handful of players that will be available between 23 and 42. And some of those players at 23 may be available at 42. Some of those players that we think we grade them at 30 may be available at 32. So I do think
somebody, yeah.
Somebody's going to be available at 32. I mean, at 42, excuse me, that they really like. They grade around that area, and they may feel like that it makes more sense to get more out of that pick. Now you got 2 second rounders. I still would have kept the first, honestly. But you also may, for Houston, look at avoiding paying the first round money for a rookie quarterback. I mean, for a rookie, first round rookie for their contract. So that goes into it. And I also think to myself, we just saw Keenan Allen go for a 4th rounder. So I think for Houston, who has addressed the D-line position, right, Danielle Hunter, they have addressed the running back position, right, Joe Mixon, right? They have addressed the amount of holes that they had to fill on this roster because they had over 20 free agents. So you're not going to be swinging out of the park and getting tier 1 signings throughout the entire free agent.
Right. You just have too many things to
got too many holes to fill. So once that Keenan Allen deal went down, which we later found out that Houston was definitely in the mix, and it didn't fall through for them in their favor. I also think for Houston, it was important for them to get some insurance and say, well, we can get a 2nd rounder and maybe use a 3rd or 4th to trade for a wide receiver because they have yet to address adding weapons for CJ Stroud, who had a phenomenal rookie year, no doubt about it. But in that rookie year, Tank Dell didn't finish the year because of injury, and he was tearing it up here in Houston before that. Nico Collins was your sole receiver that you could trust for the last 5 weeks of the season going into the playoffs. You cannot have that again. And from what I've been told behind scenes, Houston is still definitely doing their research on the wide receiver market. Now, I don't know what's going on with Stephon Diggs and his cryptic tweets on Twitter. I mean, we know how.
Oh my God, that would be so sick.
That would be amazing, right?
2 second rounders to the Bills. Just send them. Stephon Diggs.
2 of them?
Yeah. Well, so the Vikings got a 1st rounder and then some for Diggs a few years ago. So that's my frame of reference.
I don't think Diggs is worth 2 second rounders. And I would be disappointed if Houston sent over 2 second rounders, knowing that you still need to address your defensive line position. You lost out on Malik Collins. You lost out on Sheldon Rankins. You did bring in Tim Settle. So now you got Will Anderson, Hunter, Fatukauzi, Khalil Davis, Tim Settle. Right, you got some guys that are good rotational players outside of Hunter and Anderson. You still got to look at that interior D-line position and address that. You still need a cornerback, right? You still need a safety with $19 million left on your salary cap at the time of this recording. You can't go into next season with Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie as your safety, which led to the number 26, 27 overall passing defense. They were a huge part of that. So sending over 2 second rounders for a receiver that, as good as he is, as great as he's been for Josh Allen, we are starting to see. I mean, Stephon Diggs is not necessarily the deep threat that he once was.
Yeah, maybe that's is he a little washed? All right, fair enough.
Yeah, so not to maybe one of those for Houston. Maybe you send over the 59th overall pick and use the 42nd over a player that you really like and you thought would be available between 23 and 42. Then you draft that player, and then now you go into the 3rd round looking at other needs that you need to address. But I do think for Houston, securing that second round pick was good for them to maybe dangle over teams and say, hey, that receiver on your roster that you may want to get rid of, or he's disgruntled.
T.
Higgins is a name I throw out there. Diggs, Ayuk is a name I throw out there, right? Like just maybe disgruntled guys that want to move on from their situation, want to be in a better situation for their families. We got a 2nd rounder for you. And I think that's why we saw them, get that back and then get one for next year.
Yep.
So
you'll be in the same spot next year, but with your first.
Right. And that's huge for Houston. They got 2 second rounders for next year. Overall for Houston, I think that they did a couple of things, right? Just they saw players in that draft pool that they thought would be available at 42 that they really do like, regardless of their position. And I would really like T Sweat from UT here in Houston. They also saw an opportunity to contractually, financially avoid paying first round tender to a rookie on their contract. They also saw an opportunity to say, hey, well, we got a second rounder for a receiver out there that can come in and help our offense because they can't go into next season with the same receiver core. That would be completely irresponsible and malpractice on behalf of Nick Caserio.
Got it. How about free agent? The Texans can do the Vikings one last favor. They can go out and sign free agent wide receiver 3 type KJ Osborne. Somebody to fill out the room, right?
We'll love it.
Give him more than, I think it has to be like $3 million a year, which he'll probably get more than that. And that affects the Vikings compensatory pick situation such that they get a 3rd rounder for Danielle Hunter, which is currently canceled out.
How many favors y'all want Houston to do for y'all?
Just one more.
That's a lot of favors.
One more.
And so we y'all got Blake Cashman. We didn't necessarily get anything for Blake Cashman.
You got a comp pick.
Okay. All right.
So there's that.
All right.
Although I don't know. You guys are probably flush with comp picks with all those free agents leaving and big names too. But yeah, signing Hunter.
I would love KJ, but Houston, they re-signed Noah Brown. And I think KJ and Noah Brown are in the same tier of receivers.
Yeah, you need that like superstar, and then like you need like your Josie and the Pussycats, right? Like
yes,
you got a couple of Pussycats, but we need a Josie.
Yes, and I think for Houston, what's important for them right now is to secure either a true number 2 receiver because they already have one on their roster, whether it's Tank Dell or Nico. So if you add to that, you're looking at a very explosive offense. And KJ will be great for a wide receiver 4 spot. But the problem is they re-signed Noah Brown, and they have yet to move on from Robert Woods, who it's just I don't know why that deal hasn't happened yet. Why hasn't he been released? So, but I also think Houston will wait till after the draft to kind of address some needs as well.
Yeah, a lot of times that maybe he's like mulling over a pay cut or something like that, and he's taking his time, which would be respectable. But all right, John, tell my Vikings listeners where they can find you and where they can find your show.
Oh man, on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Follow, subscribe, listen, like to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Got a quick question. If you guys were able to trade up and get your quarterback, ideally, who would it be?
For me, I'm a big Jaden Daniels guy, but I kind of understand that that's pie in the sky. So it's between Drake May and JJ McCarthy. I like Drake May. I think most people like Drake May. I think the Vikings prefer Drake May, but I can't say that for sure because we've seen a lot. We heard a lot at the combine that they were big on JJ McCarthy. We heard that they were big on Drake May and that New England is not necessarily. So right now, everybody's daydreaming about trade up to 3, pick Drake May, and then we'd have Caleb Williams and Drake May in the same division for their whole careers, which would be pretty
cool. What is it about JJ McCarthy that is making people just go crazy? Because I have 4 eyes, so do you, and I haven't seen it from him.
So for me,
for a first round pick, I haven't seen it.
For me at least, he's got more polish than I think some of these like super runaround QBs like Williams and May have, where like those guys will run around and make these cool explosive plays. It's a lot of really fun eye candy, but the way that they work in the pocket, they'll abandon their feet a lot. They'll abandon their base and then they'll be throwing off platform. McCarthy doesn't really do that until he's actually like on a rollout or like running, and then he's throwing on the move, and he does that with proper mechanics. I think McCarthy has an underrated scramble drill just because he's in a class with these 2 guys that run around like Patrick Mahomes. But McCarthy can get out the pocket and make something happen. And I think just a little bit calmer with his feet in the pocket, and I think that really gets QB coaches going. And he's younger. He's only 21, so you can kind of see like he's a bad deep ball, and I think I know why that is, but it's a guess. But I think whatever QB coach is going to have that same opinion. They're going to think that they know why, right? And they're going to say, well, he's just 21. We can teach that out of him. So I think that there's this like idea of potential as well that make people like him. I think he's just a little over. Like if he came out in a class that didn't have Caleb Williams and Drake May, I think we would be talking about him a little bit more like we talked about, say, Jared Goff in 2016, who went 1 overall going, this guy's a quarterback. I do think he's a quarterback, but I think he's a little overshadowed by guys. Personally, I think the most appropriate place to take him is like late in the first, middle of the, like in the 20s. But just because of the nature of the draft, he's going to go higher than that because everybody's got to go up and get their quarterback because nobody wants to be the one that got stuck with Bo Nix. We've already talked about this for far too long. So we'll get out of here. You can find Locked On Texans and Locked On Vikings wherever you find your favorite shows. Check out Locked On Sports Today. You can find a 24/7 streaming channel. Nothing else like it on the internet. So go ahead and flip that thing on and forget about it. We will see you guys all tomorrow.